Hello friends! Welcome to Vlogtober. You'll no doubt have noticed that it's the 4th of the month and I haven't uploaded a single video yet. That's because I don't plan on uploading a video a day during Vlogtober. I know that's the general format, sorry to disappoint. There are a few reasons why I decided not to upload every day, which are boring and I won't get into. In today's video, I wanted to have a small chat about some of the books I've read this year, now that I've passed my reading goal on Goodreads, what I'm currently reading and what I'm geared up to read next. The first book I want to talk about is one of the books I finished very early this year, and it's The Binding by Bridget Collins. This is a book about magic, a very specific kind of magic in which you can literally have parts of your life bound into a book. The obvious things to keep hidden are grief and pain. The people who do this are called binders, and that's where this book opens, with Emmett Farmer, who is an apprentice binder. The Binding has the usual sort of novel things, love, intrigue, fear, but deep down, this is a book about the way that we process emotions. I guess that's something that's very personal to me as someone who struggles with emotion processing and who is working hard at struggling less. Are there times when reading this book that I wanted to be able to visit a binder and have these things taken out of myself? Of course. Did I still want this by the end of the book? No. The Binding is one of those books that I just didn't want to end, and I will definitely reread it again before the year is out. I've read a lot of work by Charlie Homburg this year, including all 4 books of The Paper Magician, Veins of Gold, followed by Frost, and Magic Bitter, Magic Sweet. They're all relatively easy and fun reads until you start thinking about them more deeply. There are some troubling issues in basically all of them that can be summed up as perpetuating white patriarchy. The Paper Magician books are based on the premise that the protagonist has a relationship with her teacher, though to be fair, the plastic magician is far less troublesome than the other books. There's a weird reinforcing of racial stereotyping in Magic Bitter, Magic Sweet. I can't really remember much of Followed by Frost, but it reinforces classist tropes. Veins of Gold was the one I enjoyed the most. I'm not really sure why I read so many books by Homburg given the issues, and despite the issues, I like her writing style, and I keep hoping that the books will get more nuanced. Finally, for fiction, I read Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. I'm not sure why it took me so long to read this, given it's the kind of everything I love in a book. It's set in a dystopian future in which a young female protagonist grapples with life and religion, and although there are radical changes that happen throughout the book, it's presented as though nothing really happens. Or more precisely, that everything that happens is normal and therefore does not constitute a need for specific pointing at. Given that so many of the things that happen could constitute such a need for emphasis, what makes this book so powerful is precisely that this emphasis is not dwelled on. Dystopia happens in millimeters, not kilometers, and that's what the Parable of the Sower really brings out so beautifully. I'd really like... I'd really like to see a juxtaposed reading of The Parable of the Sower and Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, particularly around the concept of race naming. Butler very specifically and openly talks about the racial heritage of her characters, and protagonist Lauren emphasizes race and interracial relationships at several key points during the book. But there isn't ever maliciousness in her observations. It's stated as fact, whether material or immaterial. I could be wrong, but I feel like this is something I've never noticed a white author do in the same way. I recently finished a book by E.L. Wiseman called The Least of All Possible Evils, A Short History of Humanitarian Violence, which appears to have an alternative subtitle, Humanitarian Violence from Iran to Gaza. This is a book that's based on the principle of lesser evil or doing least harm. It's kind of an over-intellectualized book, not one I think lives up to the short history genre and doesn't actually present a history of humanitarian violence. It was extremely interesting, but difficult to grapple with. I think the thing I appreciated most about the book was the way it both used and critiqued the use of physical remains as a marker of lesser evil. The remains, in this case of Israeli attacks on the Gaza Strip. Weisman's analysis hung on the fact that, at the end, material evidence cannot really lie, although I don't think that's true. But more than that, the material evidence of destruction doesn't really care that a calculation was arrived at regarding an acceptable level of civilian death. For instance, the quoted number in relation to the American attacks in Iraq was 30. Below 30 anticipated civilian deaths, a remote attack could go ahead with no higher authority required. Above 30, and either Rumsfeld or Bush would need to sign the order. I picked this book up, obviously, as something I thought might be interesting to read before starting my master's, and I was right. I'll talk more about this in an upcoming video on what I did to prepare for my master's program. As for books I'm reading at the moment, Ruby Hammond's White Tears, Brown Scars, which I'm about halfway through, and is really horrific and amazing and gut-wrenching and unsurprising. And as a white woman, I'm really glad that I read Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility first to get ready with my feelings for reading this important book. Sadi Hediat's The Blind Owl, which I'm reading in translation, which is intense and beautiful. Abbas Amanat's Iran, Modern History. I'm also reading Post-Conflict Archaeology and Cultural Heritage, which is edited by Paul Newson and my amazing ex-colleague Ruth Young, and lots and lots and lots of stuff for uni. For now, though, that's it. There are links to all the books that I've discussed below, as well as a list of all the books I've read so far this year, in case you're interested. Thanks for watching. Like if you've liked. Subscribe if you aren't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.